Hey guys, welcome to a tutorial for one of our favorite exercises, the squat. And like we did with the overhead press, we are going to start with showing you where to set the bar up in terms of height, right? So if Prashanti gets up close to the bar is around sternum height. So she will actually have to squat down a little bit to be able to get under the bar. Now this is important because when she actually stands up, she should be able to clear the pins by a little bit. If it was too high, she would hit the pins and it would throw you off. So bar height is just around sternum height. And as far as where to place the bar on your back, I'm just going to have Prashanti go under the bar again. Now there are two basic positions. One is what's called a high bar position, where the bar is high up, basically on the top of your traps here. Or you can do a low bar, where the bar is really low. It's right over the rear delt or right on the back of the shoulder. So these are two extreme positions which we can take. What we recommend for people to start out with is basically find the middle, right? So Prashanti is going to go about midway between high and low bar. And once she feels like it's a relatively stable position, she's going to unrack and do her squat. You can put it back. Okay, now we're going to talk about grip width, and this is something that we often see people mess up on. So how wide or close you should have the bar is more a matter of individual preference and also based on how mobile and flexible your shoulders are. So Prashanti has a fairly close grip, but you'll notice when she gets under the bar that her wrists are straight. What will often happen if you take such a close grip is your wrists are extended and bent back like this. Now this is not a very stable position. Imagine you have 100-200 kilos on the bar. All that weight is going to be going right onto your wrist. So you want to be in the closest possible position, but where your wrists are straight. So if I'm just going to have Prashanti unrack and step back. Now if I could just get Chirag to come around to the side, just stay there. So if you notice, there's almost a straight line from her wrist all the way down to her elbows. So that's basically what we want to happen. So you can just rack it. Now she could go wider and still maintain the same position, right? But the trouble with that is you're not going to get as much tension through your upper back. So she can go super wide, her wrists are still in a good position, but there's not much happening over here. And again, with the heavy weights, we want as much tension as possible through that back. You want a nice tight shelf for the bar to sit on. So grip width as close as possible while maintaining a neutral wrist position. And in terms of high versus low bar, the lower your bar position, the harder this becomes. So if she gets the bar really low, you can see her wrists start to bend back. She might need to go a little wider. So if you are about a high bar position, you can probably afford to get your hands in closer. So take a call based on where the bar is placed, how mobile your shoulders are, and what feels good for your wrist. Okay, now we're going to talk about actually picking the bar up off the rack. We're not getting to the squat yet, but how to just unrack and how to breathe while you unrack the bar. So when Prashanti is going to get under the bar, her wrists are in that good position that we talked about. Now, we're going to talk about spine position a little bit here. So if we can just get Chirag to pan down to the side. So we basically want a slightly extended spine. And what I mean by that is I'm going to have Prashanti exaggerate and do a super arched back. There's a huge arch, especially through her low back. And if she can do the opposite where she rounds her back, again, neither of these two positions are desirable. We want to find a position somewhere in the middle, right? So there's a little bit of extension through the back, which is what we want. We want a slight arch. And once she's found this position, she's going to breathe into this position. So what Prashanti is going to do is she's going to take a big breath in through her nose, fill up her midsection with air, take a little bit more through her mouth, and then stand up with the bar. So if you just put it back on the pins for a second, we'll talk about how to get this air in. So if I just get you to come right behind her. So if you could just get your grip. So when we normally take in air, you might just think, okay, I'm just going to sniff in air, and that's what she just did now, but nothing much is happening here. What you really want to do is think about filling up 360 degrees of your midsection with air, right? So she's pushing out in the front, on the sides, and even into her low back. So she's imagining inflating her midsection from all 360 degrees. When she's got as much air as she can, that's when she's going to stand up with the bar, and now she's going to step back. So she's taken her steps, And now before she squats, this might have taken about 5 seconds, so she's going to inhale again and then descend into the squat. Okay, so now we're almost at the squat. We're going to talk about the walkout and the squat itself. So we're going to retrace all those steps that we've been through previously: bar position, wrist position, back position. She's going to breathe in, stand up with the bar, and now this is where, again, a lot of people mess this up. I'm going to have you do a wrong walkout first. So people take multiple steps, they take a big trip back, and then the trouble with this is, and you can probably see it, is the bar shifts a lot. You lose tension. You can see Prashanti's wrists are a little bit out of position now. So if you take too many steps in the walkout, it's just inefficient and it's going to lead to a suboptimal squat. So the way we like to teach the walkout is, I'm just going to have her get under the bar. She's going to take her big breath in and stand up with it, let the bar settle, and she's going to take 3 steps. So there's 1, 2, and a 3rd step to set her feet symmetrically. That's it. So it's 1, 2, 3, and she's ready to go. So now she's in a good position to squat. She's going to take her breath in, and if you've done all the preceding steps right, the squat itself should be fairly simple. You just want to think squat straight down. It sounds too simple, but really, if you've done everything else up to this point, it should be fairly intuitive. So get the unrack right, 3 steps, and then you can squat straight down. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth on the squat. I mean, we wish it was as simple as squat straight down, but there are some two main things we need to watch out for. So I'll have Prashanti take the bar out. Now the main thing with the squat is we want to make sure the bar is over the middle of the foot. And what I mean by that is, if I draw a line from the barbell straight down, that line should cut through the middle of Prashanti's foot. So I'm going to have a squat down, and I'm just going to hold at the bottom, so just pause there. So the bar should be more or less over the middle of the foot. Now this weight's a little bit light for Prashanti, so it might even be a little bit ahead of midfoot. That's fine. When you get to your working sets, you should be right over midfoot. The second point is on depth, right? So when you first start out with the squat, you may not be going as low as you could. So I'm going to have Prashanti just do like a partial squat. Maybe you're a little tentative with where the bar, how low you need to go, and that's totally normal. Ideally, depth, at least in powerlifting terms, is when your crease of your hip is below the top of the knee, right? In simpler terms, just pause at the bottom. Your thigh should be slightly below parallel with the floor. That's what we want when we squat. So simple fix for depth, right? You probably may not go as low as you could, is to just use a box. You could video yourself and do all of that, but a simpler solution is if you have a box at a chair, something just below knee height, right? And when you unrack, you're going to stand right in front of that box, and she's just going to aim to touch the box gently and come back up. So that automatically gives her a sense of how low she needs to go. So if you're worried about depth, you don't think you're going low enough, use a box. That often helps. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a bunch of mistakes or issues that might crop up when you're doing the squat. Some of these might apply, or all of these might apply. We'll go through them one by one. So the first is the bar being ahead of midfoot when you squat, right? And this is very, very common. So when Prashanti's going to squat, she's going to do a not so good squat. So, and you'll notice right at the bottom, the bar is almost over her toes or even in front of her toes. Just do one more like that. Now, nothing terrible is going to happen with this. It's just that it's inefficient, right? We want the bar over the middle of the foot because that will allow us to handle more weight and use our muscle most optimally. So the easiest fix for this, one fix is actually the box squat that we spoke about, which just cues you to sit back a little bit more. Another fix is to think about creating more tension with your feet, right? So usually when folks fall forward too much, it's because their knees are just shooting forward. Instead, what Prashanti can think about is spreading the floor apart with her feet. Like she's trying to create a big hole in the middle of the floor. And what that will do is it will engage your hips a little bit more, and it will shift your body and the bar back a little bit closer to midfoot. So that's one good way to work on the bar going forward too much. Second big mistake is the opposite, right? Where you just sit back way too much. sometimes called a good morning squat. So it's almost like she's trying to do a deadlift on the way down, and nothing terribly wrong here. It's just that she's not using her quads as much as she could, and it's just an inefficient way to squat. So often this happens because you're not creating enough tension through your upper body. So one cue that we like to use is to imagine throwing the bar off your body, right? So she's actually going to think about throwing the bar behind her when she comes up out of the squat. And what that does is it forces tension through your upper back, and it forces you to drive into the bar, so your hips and shoulders rise up at the same time. So the third mistake is knees caving in. Okay, so people make a lot of fuss about the knees in the squat, and honestly it's not such a big deal, but there are maybe a couple of, one big mistake that we do see. So Chirag might need to pan around to the back for this one, but you'll often see knees caving in out of the bottom, right? So if you look at her knees right at the bottom, they're doing a bit of a dance, they're coming in. Now, nothing harmful with this, but it usually points to the fact that you're not using all your muscles as much as you could. So the same cue of spreading the floor apart usually works very well here. So we broadly want the knees, sorry, let's have you do a couple more reps. You broadly want the knees in line with your second toe, right? So if that is more or less happening, that's all you really want. So if you find that your knees are really caving in a ton, just spreading the floor apart usually works well for that. I'm missing one more. Looking eye gaze. Okay, so usually when the first few times you're squatting, you will tend to want to look down when you squat, right? Because you're unsure of where your feet are. Maybe there's something very distracting in front of you. There's a mirror or something. Either way, we tend to look down. Trouble with that is it forces you into that good morning squat that we spoke about. So maybe I'll just have Chirag pan back around. I'll have Prashanti do a bad rep actually first. So she's going to get set, she's going to look down at her feet and then squat. Typically your butt will tend to shoot up first like this. So ideally we want our eyes to be straight ahead. So Prashanti is going to focus on the window right up over there. So it's about head height, and she's going to keep looking at that spot as she squats. And that's usually the ideal position, just to make sure our hips and shoulders actually move at the same time. Okay. Last issue here is going to be about grip. So I think we'll just need to pan back around. So there are a number of other intricacies of the grip which we haven't spoken about. I think the main one is, where do your thumbs go? So if you take a very powerlifting style squat, most people tend to grab the bar with their thumb around the bar like Prashanti is now. So if you just get under the bar, what the advantage of this is, it gives you a nice secure grip. You can really get everything tight. You feel a lot more stable and wedged in. The downside is it does tend to put your wrist into a bit of extension, right? So again, it can tend to increase the stress on your wrist. So if that is the case, you don't feel like you're able to maintain a good wrist position, we recommend a thumbless grip. So now you can see the bar is automatically shifted a little lower on Prashanti's palms, and she's able to maintain a much more flat wrist position. So experiment with both. Neither is better than the other, but wherever you feel more comfortable on your wrists, but you're still able to keep tension, is the one you want to choose. And yeah, that's about it. So if you've got this far, thanks for watching. If you have any further questions in the squat, this is just a basic tutorial. Reach out to us and we will make more videos on that. So thanks, and we will see you again soon.